All right, well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. Our topic today focuses on first steps to take towards practice safety with good practice design. My name is Adam, Content Marketing Specialist with Schein, and I'll be your moderator. If you have any questions during today's presentation, please add them to the Q&A section of your control panel, and we will answer as many as we can live at the conclusion of the webinar. Please make sure that your volume is up and any large applications are closed to ensure a smooth connection. This webinar is sponsored by Schein Dental and Midmark, and no CE credits are available for viewing this presentation. I would like to introduce our speakers, Dr. Jeff Carter and Pat Carter. Dr. Jeff practiced dentistry for 17 years before transitioning full-time for the past 20 years to dental office design. And Pat has more than 40 years of experience with dental office design and focuses exclusively on the unique design challenges you might encounter. Thank you both for joining us today. We're all looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks so much. I want to thank you all for joining us. We have a short period of time, but we've been very diligent wanting to put together information we hope you find helpful. And the big question that we're getting, certainly if you're considering any kind of project, is what's the first step? What do I need to understand? How do I lay out a dental office that will be effective? And related against that is also the issue about COVID. We thank Midmark for letting us be a part of this process of delivering this information to you. An interesting thing we've got, and I'm going to put on my glasses now so I can read this information. If you are watching, most of you are really not sure what you want to do, whether it's remodel your existing space, go to a new lease space, do a new building. So I want you to hear that as that's okay. We have most of the people we come in contact are doing that exploration just to find out what is the best project for me. And sometimes you start out, those of you that are saying, I'm going to do a lease space, or I'm going to do a new building, or I am going to remodel. Sometimes find through the process that we're going to show you here in the next few minutes that maybe there's a project option that you had not considered that might even suit you better. So we hope that this is going to be helpful to you. We're going to move right into that. And Jeff, what are our learning objectives?
Well, Pat, okay. Our learning objectives, well, you know, we find in our experience that the hardest thing for dentists or dental specialists is really the logistics of a new project. You know, the design part is fun. The design part, I would say it's easy, but it's fun and enjoyable. It's the logistics. So what type of project is right for my practice? Where am I going to locate it? How much is it going to cost? What is the process like? How do I hire a contractor? All of those logistical things. So we're going to, in a short period of time, hopefully walk through some of those, give you some direction on that. Pat's going to talk about, there are a lot of questions about how do I lay out an office once I found my space, once I found a piece of property or a lease space, or even remodeling my existing office. You know, what do I do then? You know, how do I lay out a floor plan? What are good principles? We're going to show you a lot of that, and part of this is that, you know, great design principles still work. It's not time to turn everything upside down and start over. They still work. It's just they're not in common knowledge out in the dental community. People just aren't, you know, I didn't learn in dental school how to design a dental office. You know, it's just, it isn't something that dentists are familiar with unless they've just designed one recently. So like I said, in our learning objectives, we'll show you with good design, the new compliance requirements. It's not going to be a big deal. You know, it's going to be an adjustment. It's not a, hey, turn my office upside down and start over. So hopefully this will give you some confidence and some, you know, optimism as we look forward and make our way through this. And even to the right, you know, here's a little, I'm going to read the whole thing, but, you know, the thing that dentistry has been through, I actually, in the practice in the 80s, I was one of the first people to see AIDS patients, and people were just kind of freaked out and concerned, and, you know, gee, you know, how are we going to protect ourselves? We got through all that stuff, as well as many other things, hepatitis. So dental offices are really geared up to handle infection control, and I think, you know, I think you'll be maybe pleasantly surprised, you know, how well a well-designed office is set up to do that. So one thing, let's just start out with, you know, we have people will call us, you know, and say, hey, you know, I'm starting a new office, you know, I think I want to do a ground up building, you know, I'm not sure how many ops, I don't know how large it is, but I think I really want to do one. Well, and you have to get specific. You have to get specific to, you know, what it is you're trying to accomplish, and really keep this in mind, the operatory count. So if you're a general practitioner, the operatory count, or if you're a specialist, the chair count, the treatment chair count really drives all facilities. It drives the size of facilities. It drives which layout space or piece of property is appropriate for that facility. So get really clear, what is my chair count? What is my operatory count? So is it 5 operatories? It's just for me, it's myself. I have 2 full-time hygienists. I have a swing op. I can use 5 operatories and that'll work great. So those are the things you have to sort through. We can't tell you what's, without more information, what specifically will work best for you, but get an op count down and then things start to fall in place. You can resource people. You can work with Henry Schein. Some of your like mid-mark reps are very knowledgeable in dental office design principles and how the logistics and things, but things will start to fall in place. So for example, one of the first questions that come up, can I afford my project? Well, we have to know how big.
One question.
Yeah, we have to know how big it is. What is it? Yes, okay, let's just say it's 5 ops. It's in, we've used another metric. We take the number of operatories times 500 square feet to initially gauge how large the office is. So 5 ops times 500 square feet. Well, we need about 2,500 square feet would be a great starting point, whether it's a lease space or whether it's a ground up construction building. So with that, we can back into some numbers. But people's biggest fear, can I afford my project? Just keep in mind, we've tracked over, 20, 30 years, newly designed facilities, remodeled facilities, and the doctors on average after 2 years, their production goes up 35%. Okay, so there's a little graphic off here to the right on the screen. Can I afford my project? More specifics. But if you figure at the end of 2 years, you're going to go up 35% and you have to add some function. Well, if your debt service and new facility related costs are 20% or less by figuring out what you're doing, running these calculations, well, then you're in a very safe range. So for example, here's a hypothetical where their production increased going, they're taking $2,500 more in new rent, $5,000 more in debt service for a new project going from one lease space to another. That's a $7,500 increase per month in facility related costs. Well, if they're producing $50,000, that's a 15% production increase. At the end of 2 years, if they're up 35%, they've more than covered the 15% production increase and they have 20% left over. So they're putting money into their pocket. But just a new, very well-designed office that adds function can give you, you can count on somewhere around a 35% increase. For some people have done fabulously greater than that, but just keep that in mind. So that gives you confidence as you get into something, you're able to fund that. So trying to make this quick, Pat. So estimating realistic project costs. If we had more time, we could run spreadsheets and do all kinds of more detailed stuff, but in simplest terms. So for anybody here that's doing a new lease space, okay, just take the number of operatories of the graphic here on the right, take the number of operatories and multiply it times $100,000. So for example, in this I'm going to do a 6 operatory lease space. Take 6 ops times $100,000. That's $600,000. That's an estimated, that's a good starting point as an estimated total project cost for that facility. You go plus or minus 20%, create a range. So we're at say 480 to 720, you do something really high end, or you might get more budget conscious and drive it down, but somewhere in there. So it may not be that exactly, but you need a good starting point. You need a good starting point to decide, hey, is this something I even want to do? In a building, it's actually the kind of a same metric and almost as simple. If you want to do a new ground up construction building, total project cost, that's land costs, that's design fees, that's engineering fees, that's site work, that's parking, that's site lighting, that's landscaping, that's shell, that's interior finish, that's equipment and furnishings, that's technology, that's everything. So in a ground up construction building, the best starting point is take the number of operatories times $200,000. So you say, hey, I want to do a 6-op ground up construction building on a piece of property, other than if you're in downtown New York City or maybe LA or Miami Beach, yes. Yeah, so that has high property rates, but 6 ops times 200,000, okay, it's a $1.2 million project for a 6 operatory ground up construction building. That may be on the mid to even the low end now. We've had a little bit of inflation, but that gives you some sense. So we've had people pursuing ground up construction buildings for many, many years, thinking they're going to be half of what they cost, and it's not the good half. They're off by half, and they've spent time and money and looked at pieces of property and things like that, only to realize, gee, that's nothing I want to do, or it's something that maybe they can't qualify for. Even if they could, that's that's out of their comfort range. But just keep those in mind. We have several people doing remodels. Remodels are very difficult to project cost-wise. It just depends on the specifics. But I would say one thing: in a remodel, it's very typical when you remodel and add on square footage, you end up tearing up about half of the office, and the other half you have to come back and refurbish it so it matches the new finished out part. You don't do a fancy new finished out part, maybe add on, and then you come back to the old part and it looks like it's from 20 years ago. So invariably, it just, not every time, but it's a very typical. If you're going to remodel about half your office, you're going to come back and then refurbish or spiff up the other half. And that's a little bit more difficult to predict cost-wise. So those are just metrics to keep those in mind. So for example, in a building, okay, so I said the operatory count drives everything. So let's say here's that 6 operatory building I just told you in most places might be 1.2 million plus or minus 20%. Okay, so I want 6 ops, 500 square feet, number of operatories, optimal building size. Okay, optimal building size is 3,000 square feet. Well, how much property do I need? I need 7 times that in land to adequately site that 3,000 square foot, 6 operatory building. 7 times 3,000 is still 21,000 square feet. An acre is 43,560. So an optimal lot for your 6 operatory ground up construction building right here, 21,000 square feet, not quite half an acre. So here it is right here. There's a 6-op building, that's adequate parking. Another metric we use, you take the number of ops times 3.75, that's adequate parking, whether it's a lease space, a ground up construction building. So if I take 6 times 3.75, that's like 21 spaces-ish. Right here, because you have a handicapped lot. And parking is huge. You know, people, if it's hard to park in your, whether it's a building or a lease space, you know, that can be a big detriment. I mean, Pat's mom stopped going to the orthodontist because it was too hard to park and switched to another one. So, but there's many metrics with that. So ideally, you know, if you use those kinds of metrics, so this is for people doing property, but if you have the adequate size and property and its orientation is correct. So for example, here's a great layout. Here's a dental building. This is a larger dental building. This is an 11-op, almost 6,000 square foot, actually oral surgery building. But one, see, this is the main patient entry. Here's a street. You come in here, you turn in here. The first thing you come to is patient parking. The most obvious visible thing is the main entry to the building. That's comforting for patients. They're not wandering around the building trying to figure out how to get in it. But patient parking 2, 3, staff parking over here. It's nice to separate staff from patient parking. It's more comfortable. Staff comes in back here by 7. They come back. Delivery, that could be a sedated patient exit. Operatories north, so this is a north orientation. We would love to put as many operatories as north as possible because we love north light. It's not direct sun. You know, you don't get heat gain, all of that stuff. Operatories face north and east. There's some ops over here. So this is an ideal lot. This sets up perfectly for a dental building. Dumpster, we don't want that right in the front. Drop-offs. An unobstructed curb appeal. So as cars whiz by your fancy building right here, here's a nice sign. Oh, they looked at the right. This is the pretty part of the building. It's just, that's an ideal setup. So selecting the proper lot or selecting the proper lease space, that can, you know, all the design in the world can't overcome a poorly chosen lease space or a poorly chosen piece of property that has, you know, all kinds of design limitations to it.
So the significance of this 500 square feet per op, you may be going 500 square feet per op. We're making the assumption, and this is a fair assumption, and this is one of the issues that we run into in dentists, and you may be running into it as well, is not having the square footage they need. There are a number of you that said, I don't have the square footage I need to accomplish what I'm going to do, and I don't know how to get there. So one of the things that we're assuming in 500 square feet is that you do want to have some of those private spaces. You want to have optimum sized operatories. You want to have the right sized support for those operatories. You also want to have the appropriately sized front desk. One of the things that we see with dental offices as they expand and grow and as you become more successful, you start adding operatories and you put more pressure on that front area, both waiting seating as well as the front desk interaction for patients. And all of a sudden you've got an office that's not functioning for you. So when Jeff says get very clear from the very beginning about the number of ops, that's a significant statement we're making. Because if you're thinking, I want to start with 5, but I may go to 8, what you really want to plan for is 8. So 8 will get you to, even if you don't build those out, even if you don't initially equip them, to size your office in as informed a way as based on the number of ops. And then that square footage translates to either the shape of a site or the shape of your floor plan. We have 3 floor plans we're showing you here. So you may have an optimum amount of square footage, but if it's a long shotgun, which is what we call these types of floor plans, where you have a 20-foot bay, 25-foot bay, you see them in shopping centers all over, They're less expensive spaces, and there's a reason for that. You have the glass in the front and no windows on either side, northeast, southwest, other than what you have at the front. And those spaces are very difficult to design in, not because of a limited square footage, but because you have one travel path in and out. And notice you have one decently sized space on one side of a dental office, and then poorly sized spaces that are fully exposed to those activities on the opposing side. So we like to tell doctors, given the chance, that 20 to 25 foot wide spaces, stay away from them. Now, as soon as you start doubling that up, you may end up with something that's 30 to 35 feet. That starts to improve your situation. If you look at the floor plan right here, you can see with fully sized spaces and fully sized spaces. One detriment, however, is that we're starting to stack the spaces and we're creating these little alcoves, these little hallways to get to it. One thing about dental offices is you're lots of little spaces, and you have all these little spaces because you've got very distinct functions for those rooms. One of the challenges in space planning a dental office is how to organize those spaces so you don't spend this, if you will, the square footage in hallways. You want to minimize the hallways, except for flow and efficient flow. So what we're going to propose for those of you that are out looking, 40-foot width minimum, sheet of paper size is sometimes the way we talk about it. Sheet of paper size proportions will give you an opportunity to circulate around a core area. If you look at this floor plan, in this particular floor plan, we've got operatories that wrap not only on the north, but on the east. We have a very efficient flow for sterilization, which is centrally located, and a core area that's centrally located. This is what efficiency is about. It's about understanding and organizing the space in a way that you can circulate, that you're oriented to northeast, that you have the optimum square footage, etc.
And then a big part, like we said, the operatories are really the starting point, drive the layout of the office. So a common question is, what's a typical size operatory? So for general practitioners, the short answer is 10'4" wide, inside clear, by about 12 feet deep, 11.6 to 12 feet deep. So if you look at these dimensions right, here's an example of that footprint. So if you build up the dimensions, this lower graphic here, 18 inches between the dental chair and any the foot end wall. The dental chair is 6 feet long, another 27 to 32 inches between the headrest of the dental chair and a 12 o'clock cabinet, which is around 22 inches deep. You add all that up, sometimes a stud wall back here, you're at about 11.6 to 12 feet. Going in the width of the operatory, a side cabinet 18 inches, 32-inch clearance between the dental chair and the side cabinet. That's our ADA access. That's a wheelchair clearance. That's also a comfortable reaching distance. If I'm seated right here as the assistant, I can reach that side cabinet. 27, 28-inch wide dental chair, another 32-inch clearance, 18-inch cabinet. You add that all up, you're at about 10'4"-ish. We used to do 10, we used to do 9'6", and it was getting so tight, people would get stuck in their stool in there. But just keep in mind, a good common footprint for a general practitioner operatory would be 10'4" wide, 12 feet deep. If you start there, you might push and pull on a little bit, but you can integrate any good manufacturer's equipment. You can come up with ambidextrous operatories that support right and left-handed users. You won't be wedged in there. You'll be able to bring in technology, mobile units, all that kind of stuff. And go ahead.
Can I add? So as the designer in this part as well, what we like to see you, if it's an opportunity that you can create, especially if you're doing a new building, to create ceiling height in the operatory and definitely get a window, as large a window as you possibly can. We've had remodeled offices where you turn to the landlord and say, can I knock out a window here or there? And all of a sudden they find out, had they not asked the question, they would never have known that they could add a window to their operatories. So highly encourage windows. You want to lower the fear of the patient. These are small spaces because they're efficient. They work ambidextrously. We want to get as much height as we reasonably can in there and effectively set these all up in a way that we can be efficient now in a floor plan.
And here's a nice example down here. So in the lower left, here's a nice configuration. This is a split delivery, doctor's module here, assistant's module there. That's an actual real life equipment version of this idealized operatory, right, that we're showing in those graphics.
So how do you organize all these spaces? So this is where it's a very simple principle in design, and we're taught this as designers, but it's not necessarily practiced well in the dental facility. So the reason why we like to teach this and the reason why we're sharing this with you is It is on you to decide and react to a floor plan that's issued to you. Well, how do you do that? How do I look at a floor plan and understand that it's efficient or not? So we're going to talk a little bit about zoning. One of the overviews of a floor plan is zoning. Zoning is an organization of spaces that have common function. That's it. Organization of spaces that all have common function. Seems pretty simple, but when you start organizing and throwing down these floor plan spaces, you'll find that you start violating that zone. And once you start violating zones, that's where you become inefficient. That's also where you invite the cross hazards of when we talk about disease transmission, where you have a doctor's office in the middle of a clinical zone where it shouldn't be. We shouldn't be having those overlaps and those zoning violations. The first zone to be laid out is the clinical zone. And the clinical zone is all of those spaces associated with clinical practice. So it's the operatories, the lab, the imaging, the mechanical room, sterilization, clinical. And so when you look at this floor plan, this is what we are in fact showing you is a zone of spaces. Notice all the operatories are north and east. Sure.
So just to go back to the operatory size, and so this is a perfect example. So this is 10'4" wide here, inside clear. That's 12 feet deep. So this is a 7 operatory office. So this would be all GP, but look at this corner. So we have a natural occurring corner here where we turn and come this way. Well, we can flip and up, turn it, capture a nice ADA doorway here. Well, look at the size of that. That actually takes no more space. I'm just trapping the corridor in there. So instead of being 12 feet deep, I'm adding 5 feet. I'm now at 17 feet deep. Well, that creates what we would call like a quiet op, a surgical suite. So like any oral surgeons out there, or even pediatric dentists, if you're looking for quiet ops, this is a great way to have a ADA compliant door, sound control, create a much larger feeling space. You can put a chair down here. It just gives you all kinds of flexibility. So go ahead.
We're doing in all GP practices, I would say, wouldn't you say? 99%.
We highly recommend at least 1 or 2 ops have some type of door enclosure. And even in this environment, when you put doors on every ops, we're not necessarily promoting that, but at least 1 or 2 for difficult cases, people that are going to make some noise. If you're doing any levels of sedation, it's a wonderful addition to your office.
So I'm filling in, as I click here, I'm filling in those spaces that we would call zoned in the operatory or clinical zone. Notice that all the red is together. That's the point in what I'm describing as far as zoning your plan, that all my operatories are lined up. Once I have 4 or 5 operatories in a row, we like to turn the corner. And the corner we want to turn is going north to east. That's the friendliest light exposure. Now, you may be in a building or looking at a site that you're realizing, okay, my operatories will be facing the street. Well, then don't give it up, because sometimes you can create a screen wall, you can create a berm. There are ways that you can manage sun and or exposure if that need be the case. But what we're looking for is the opportunity to turn if you've got a head count, if you will, of operatories that way. Then the next thing is the sterilization area wants to be central. Central to what? All the operatories. We want to not walk more than 2 or 3 operatories away. And if you look at some of your plans or even the office you're working in, you may be trundling farther than that. Hugh Freedy will talk about 80 people, or excuse me, assistants going in and out of a sterilization area up to 80 times a day. That's a lot of heavy use and a lot of traffic. And it's cross traffic. It's not just the staff going in and out of ops, you going in and out of ops. It's also patients trying to facilitate their flow through those corridors. So corridors go to 4'6", 5 foot wide, at least 4'6". Here's the CAD/CAM area. That's another thing that's showing up in dental, a newer thing. We have carts. We have cart storage that would be facilitating lasers or any kind of mobile cart acquisition units, anything that wants to be available to go into any operatory, but maybe not live in an operatory. And then here's a lab. This particular practice has a lot of lab work that's performed on site. And that's another question. What do you do in lab work? But notice the sterilization area. This is 7 operatories at 3,500
Which is
square
our
feet.
metric of 500 times the number of ops.
Very good. So that is how we organize. And this is the first thing that should get laid out. Operatories, clinical zone, optimally sized first. They get all the square footage they need to perform. And then right behind that is going to be the public zone. The public zone is that zone of spaces that the patients and staff are going to be experiencing before and or after treatment. So it is the waiting area. It is the front desk business area. It may be patient amenities, which we're certainly seeing some of those showing up. It also would be the consultation space. There it is, consultation space and the patient toilet. So significant about this is the location of the consultation and the patient toilet. One of the things that is devastating, it's not a strong word, devastating to us in a floor plan, is when we have an operatory that sits right across from the front desk and we see plan after plan, and you may be actually in an existing practice where you have your operatory right across from the front desk. So HIPAA beware, there's no way.
That's the biggest mistake we see in design.
I would say that's true. So you really have that, now not only is that a HIPAA problem, it is also now as you start to talk about social distancing and separating concerning disease, you've lost any hope, if you will, of separating those two. So two spaces that we use a lot as what I call buffer spaces at the consultation room and a patient toilet. So patients from the waiting area can use this toilet without going back through the clinical area. They're not interrupting any of that, and back into the waiting area. It can also be used by patients also, but the consultation room has access from staff, doctors going into consultation room without getting up and involved with the front area. And it also allows patients that may be coming in just for a consult who will be coming back for treatment. It allows these spaces to create what? Separation. Look at the separation between that front desk greeting, or if you will, reappointing area, and that first operatory. That's a major goal. When you have zones against zones, we still have certain areas and certain distances that we want to create. And then there's this thing called the private zone. Obviously, staff, doctors need areas where patients aren't going to be available or using, and that is things such as staff lounge, staff toilet, staff support, whether it's storage or toilet, doctor's office, doctor's toilet, general storage areas, the IT closet, the med gas closet, the mechanicals associated with, all of those are considered private because they're not patient interactive spaces. Notice that they are also sort of organized together. The reality is they're the lower priority. If we have the square footage, then they're optimized. If we don't have the square footage, they are compromised. And that is based on the agreement, whether you have it or not, is that the optimum thing that we're trying to do is create function that works dentally and administration of the business of dentistry optimally. And if we can get a staff lounge and a doctor's office and doctor's right, which you should have, that's why we say 500 square feet per operatory, then we can allow that to show up in the floor plan. So zoning your floor plan, and this is a way that if you literally want to bring out the colored markers, believe me, it's a good way to show yourself that you have organized your zones well enough for, okay, you want to say something more?
So here's a, here's a well-zoned, dental office, 7 ops, 3,500 square feet. It's a ground-up building, so it could be any shape, any size that we want. So it can be idealized. It's not, it isn't a lease space where you're being inserted in existing conditions. But look at this. So if you said, okay, 3 months ago, hey, we've had a COVID pandemic outbreak. We got to come in, we got to make modifications. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do to this, office that works so well, that has all these great design principles? Are we going to turn this thing upside down? No, here's what we're going to do to adapt this facility that has great design principles to meet, the current demands. So if we look, you're going to go back? You're going to go back? Okay. So here's the adjustments. Here's the adjustments. So I'm going to hit this. This is a part of the office that we would adjust for, the current conditions. So what are we going to do? We're going to come in here. It's just like when you go to the store now, we go to Home Depot, we go to Lowe's, we go to
the grocery store.
We got the little footprints all over the place that say 6 feet, and the people measure the first two at 6 feet, and then they get bored, and then the next one's 3 feet, and then the next one after that's 9 feet, and they get a little askew. But, okay. But so you come in here, so you pull out waiting room seating. You pull out waiting room seating, but here's 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet, 6 feet. We can seat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 people. I mean, if a small child's not going to come in your office by themselves while mom sits out in the car, but you can still have the reasonable amount of people in the waiting area with the 6-foot social distancing. There's a nice wide swath through here. Nice wide swath through here. Let's go up to the nice wide swath through here for people to come in and maintain a reasonable distance from these people. Then if you want to put up plexiglass shields on a temporary basis at the checkout area, but all of this meets all the social distancing thing that everybody's saying we need to be doing. So that's it. I mean, you pulled this out, you went and tried to get plexiglass at Home Depot before somebody else grabbed it. And, maybe it's something you hold on to. There's a lot of debate, hey, we need to go back to the glass enclosures that surround here. In the old days, we used to come up to the check-in window. It was a little slitty glass window. They would slide it open. Hey,
we're kind of glad to see you,
but not really. And then boom, and they would slam it shut. Those are difficult. Those are costly to install. They're costly to maintain. They create a weird funk in the office. Like it's the staff is on the other side of a barrier, and then you're on this other.
And there's scary things that happen back then.
Well, it just creates an interesting thing. So you could have some type of temporary shield here. They could wear a face shield. I mean, that's all you're doing though. You're pulling out seats, or you put tape on them and say, don't sit in those seats. You have to take them home and put them in your garage. So you hold on to, but really of that whole office, that's the adjustment. The adjustment is in the public zone. The rest of the office is set up great. You want me to go back?
Yeah.
You're gonna make me go back and see. To what?
To the floor plan.
Okay. To there?
Nope. Yeah, that's fine. Right
okay.
Here.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give you an overview really quickly of the things that we would like to suggest to you that you want to look for in your floor plan and or think about as far as creating efficient flow. Most of you had said one of the main concerns that you have or what you're hoping to get out of this today was what are those things that I need to be aware of when I'm looking at laying out a floor plan and making it efficient in dental offices. So we're going to start in the clinical zone. That is the operatories, north and east. We've mentioned that. Definitely recommend that you have at least 1 or 2 quiet ops because we're seeing more and more in general practice, the expansion of procedures, the longer procedures, that is becoming a process procedural place that really advantages GPs. Also, those GPs that are bringing in other specialists, it allows you to expand your capabilities within your practice facility. Centrally located sterilization, no more than 2 or 3 operatories away. The lab would be right behind that, farther away, probably near the doctor's office if the doctor is working here. Another thing is we're looking for separation between that front desk, and this is the reappointing, and that first operatory. We also want patients to exit and run into that reappointing area. So notice the orientation of these administrative people are towards the clinical or for that patient coming back. Also the greeting area, when I first come in, I should be able to know exactly where I'm going to say, hello, I'm here, and I'm not getting involved. I'm not walking through seating. I'm not walking through patients to get to that greeting and or initial engagement area, that kind of thing. So those are some key principles that we would suggest you consider.
So the well-designed facility, remember I said, the following the existing design principles, you're in good shape even in this, current climate. So for example, the sterilization area, the CD sterilization area, the CDC guidelines that are already in place more than adequately handle anything that COVID will introduce into your facility. So for example, here's a great setup. Here's a manufactured sterilization system of a dirty breakdown. You can look at the steps down here, dirty breakdown to a transition point where stuff is sterilized, and then a clean build-up area. So I like to joke when we do our impact design course that as a practicing dentist, I was in the sterilization area twice. Once was a complete accident. I just went this way and turned the wrong way, and I found myself standing in there. So dentists, I'll be the first to admit it, we don't know how to sterilize our instruments. We were never trained in dental school. Somebody in your office probably does it. Betty in your office sterilizes all your instruments. She quit. Now she told June how to do it. So June secretly at night comes in and sterilizes your instruments. Well, just keep in mind, if you have a poorly conceived sterilization area that wasn't working before, well, it's not going to work now. But if you have a well-designed sterilization area that meets all the CDC guidelines, follows the step-by-step process of dirty breakdown to clean buildup, you'll be fine. We don't need a secret, teeny tiny window to take the instruments that come out of the cassette out of the sterilization area, pass them through a teeny tiny hole into a whole secret chamber of clean instruments. We don't need to do that. They're stored here in cabinetry. They're completely protected from everything going on over here. So if all this stuff's in place, you'll be fine. So remember, workflow, dirty to clean. If you need help, people like Hugh Freedy or Henry Schein, the reps, they can help you with sterilization, but don't feel bad if you don't understand it. I never understood it. I understand it better now, but I never did it as a practicing dentist.
The thing I would just add to that, don't skimp. There's a tendency for the dentist to skimp on the lineal feet of sterilization area. I've never seen a sterilization area be too large. So it is to say that you definitely need to have separation between those steps that Jeff is alluding to. They're shown very clearly here. She should be wearing a mask for anybody that notices that.
Face shield.
But this is a product photo and we realize that. But the point is, do not skimp on that. And there's a tendency to kind of do it as a second afterthought. We would just encourage you to, right as you're having those conversations related to your operatory, that you're having that conversation about the sterilization area. And the significance of the sterilization area that Midmark offers, which I'm going to just celebrate them right now. This is not an equipment sales process that we're putting together here, but I will tell you they're the only ones out there that have the metal substrate to the sterilization product. And so from our standpoint, that's going to be the most maintained and highly durable product out there. When you compare that to custom cabinetry, and certainly we have custom cabinetry that occurs at the front desk, the business area, the office manager, staff areas, sometimes the lab, certainly. But I will say that, in fact, it's not going to be as durable as what you can get in the manufactured product, quite frankly, because the manufactured cabinetry systems that are out there and available to you have product now. Quartz being one of the non-porous, that's my #1 recommendation to you, is if your budget will support it, that the quartz product is non-porous and will absolutely be cleanable for you. And we use that also at the front desk on the transaction surfaces. Also, the way that the desk, or I'll call it the cabinet box, is created, it is post-formed. As you can see, it's a rounded and completely sealed door structure, and maybe more than you want to know about, but those things are going to perform at a high level. And one of the things that are definitely needing to be happening now in the operatories, if they aren't already happening, is a complete wipe down, biohazard removal from the operatory itself.
And so this is interesting. There's been a lot of discussion with, the current environment when COVID showed up about aerosol containment. So even some of you on your questionnaires had written things about positive pressure. I know that's great. People even thinking in those kinds of, kind of complex mechanical systems terms. That's great. So one thing that's come up though, your I think biggest preventer of aerosol mist in the operatories is your dental vacuum pump. So here's a nice example of what is it, Midmark PowerVac G, one of those, sit right here, state of the art. But so you want to evacuate as much as possible. Obviously, when you're prepping teeth and you got water spray or Cavitron with water spray and you're creating mist, you want the HVE in the mouth is, turned on and is evacuating as much as possible. But now there's even consideration, hey, let's, at other times, let's just leave it on. Let's put it in the assistant holder. Let's turn on the high volume evacuator and just let it suck in stuff while we're just sitting there or prepping, between prepping teeth, or maybe you have the Mirror Explorer out and you're just, doing an exam. You might as well leave the thing on. So, which brings up something you could do right now if you're wanting to take steps to, reduce aerosol containment. Have your Schein, or have people come in, have your techs come in and evaluate your dental mechanical area in general, but your vacuum pump. So for example, a lot of vacuum pumps are sold, have 5 ops, but typically only 2 or 3 ops will be using that dental vacuum pump at the same time. So it's rated for 2 or 3 users. Well, it may be undersized if you turn your high volume evacuator on at 5 ops at the same time, you're going to get a drop in suction because it's not designed, for that much output. So it'd be something to check that. But, that's an interesting point. Maybe somebody will come up with a thing you can put on the HVE tip that allows you to suck in aerosol mist and maybe muffle some of the sound coming out of it. But it's just, that's a good precaution to take. So use that as much as possible. If you have concerns about your current vacuum system, have a Schein person or one of your reps come in and evaluate that for you.
And lastly, I guess what we would just say is any material that's used in the dental office, whether it's on furniture, whether it's on equipment, to be cognizant of its cleanability and its durability. Thankfully, I will say the dental equipment equipment out there is definitely has that in mind. They realize the products that you're going to be using on it. But I would say with metals and plastics, even upholstery items, furniture is now available, as I understand it now, through Midmark, that is going to give you the capability of total wipe down with biocides that you might be using in the clinical environment. I will tell you as an interior designer, the range of fabrics that is cleanable, not only in the vinyls. There's a tendency to think it's only in vinyls. No, there are products, fabrics, we call them Krypton fabrics, Krypton, Krypton fabrics, and bleach cleanable upholstery fabrics that allow you literally to sponge down and wipe. Because there's a tendency sometimes to feel like, well, I don't know if I want vinyl in my operatory. There are leather look vinyls, some beautiful vinyls out there. And just know that there are fabrics that will perform at a high rate. Countertops. Used to be that we would typically do stone, for instance, on a transaction top. I'll tell you what, the quartz materials are so beautiful, and they can be coordinated then with the operatories, the sterilization area, all of that. If you have the budget to support that, the quartz is going to give you total lack of porosity so that they will wipe down and be very low maintenance over time. And so we highly encourage that. That doesn't eliminate the plastic laminates out there that would be on countertops, etc. But it does add to the durability and wipe down ability of those things. And then cabinetry inside and out. It should be cleanable. I already mentioned the metal substrate that comes with Midmark and is available through Midmark. But certainly something that is white. It's I use white melamine, for instance, even in the office business area. We want to be able to clean our cabinets to whatever degree is required in there. And just know that the industry out there affords you that, both in equipment and furnishing.
I actually get a lot of questions from dentists, actually, our clients over the years about, do I really need to spend, for a top of the line dental chair? So people see, a whole range. There's obviously price ranges in dental chairs, but higher end, kind of mid range and lower end. And sometimes it's budget driven. You've got to make the numbers work. But actually, here's a perfect example of a higher end dental chair. But look at the surfaces and how easy this is to wipe down. So in a mid tier or lower tier dental chair, you'll see things like exposed bolts, you'll see seaming, you'll see kind of crotches and little, things that are tough to wipe down, things that can collect fluid and stuff. So just keep in mind, a top of the line chair, it's much more streamlined, it's much more easily wiped down from an infection control standpoint.
Not to mention the function of the articulated headrest, which makes it, going to work for all kinds of shapes and types of bodies and everything. Do you want to say this, or?
Well, so I'll say it and then you can say it. Gosh, I wish we had more time. I mean, there's so much we can talk about. I mean, there's so many things. Gosh, remodels are just, they're so unique to each project. Each one of you, every project of yours is a unique vision of your own, that deserves to be explored in depth and by multiple people, and to give you a chance really, really to see that vision come to a reality. So, if what we've talked about to this point is of interest to you, we have, courses that we do sponsored by Henry Schein and Midmark, the Impact Design events. We have a couple coming up this year. We would love to see you there. We take personal appointments. Well, we actually have, what do we talk for, 14 hours? I don't know.
Yeah, it's
long. It'll seem long, don't worry. And then we have personal appointments in the end, but we would love to have you come to that. There's going to be COVID, precautions in place at both of these events. Pat and I are going to wrap ourselves completely in plastic and breathe out of a snorkel so we don't get anybody in the front.
Nobody will be contaminated.
Nobody in the front row will get a misting off of us.
But we really do encourage you, if you have floor plans, if you want to start looking into all of these, what we've described as pre-design considerations, bring your floor plans to these courses, because we will review the floor plans, and that's part of what we really go into in a lot more depth. And we really want to speak to you specifically about your project. These are interactive. We certainly organize information for these, but we do, just as Adam has afforded us an idea of who we're talking to right now, we bring people to that course with some familiarity with what you're trying to get out of that course, so we can organize and offer you information that we find will be helpful to you. So review of the floor plan is a great way to start talking about your vision, what you're trying to create. We can help you with putting and formulating the budgets that you're trying to put together, allow you to see that it is viable. Any of you out there that are wondering, oh my gosh, I don't think I can do this after those numbers that Jeff just talked to you about, I'm going to tell you, dental offices are being built every day, and we're a testament to that. It's been busier than ever. We celebrate that. We invite you to these Impact Design Group opportunities. And Adam, I guess we're going to tie it up right here and just ask if there's any, we want to make ourselves available for questions, and certainly give you any answers that we hope will prove helpful. And Adam, where do we stand on that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the presentation. We do have quite a bit of questions, so we will get right to it.
Okay.
The first question was regarding the slide you shared about size for better ergonomics. Were the specs on that slide, were the specs of the operatory that you shared relatable to a pedo office design or just a general office design?
Good question.
Okay, let me get there.
We're going to get you there. Hang on. Yeah, right there.
So that's a great question. So pedo, that's an interesting. So in pedo, it's different. So we're talking about a pediatric hygiene bay. That's a great point. So a pediatric hygiene bay may just be a 12 o'clock cabinet. You may not have the side cabinets. You may not have the side cabinets. You may have a partition between chairs. You may have no partition between chairs. But so in a pediatric hygiene bay, I love to see like what I call 7'6" centering between the dental chairs. So pediatric, here's a dental chair right here. So typically in pedo, we don't do split delivery. We do dual function rear delivery to keep the delivery units behind the kids so they can't grab them and look at them and start playing with them. But then here's a chair. I would go 7'6". I could lay down another chair, and that would actually give me my 6-foot separation between the chairs. So whether it's pediatric hygiene bay or an ortho bay, 7'6" centers between the chairs. I would still love to have 18 inches or maybe even 2 feet down here, depending if you want a mom stool. So in pedo and ortho, a lot of times we end up with moms down here. So if I only have 18 inches between the toe of the chair and the foot into the room, it's a little tough to get a stool. So I might add 6 inches and go to 2 feet, but I'm still at say 12 feet, 12'6" from here to the foot end, but I'm only at a 7'6" center. So you can still have a fin at 7'6". You can still have a fin, maybe a partial height fin that comes up. If you want full-blown partition ops and pedo, you don't necessarily even have to have these side cabinets. You can pull the side cabinets off. You could go to 8 feet. You could go to 7'6". You could have a partition here, a partition here. You could have a sink out in the corridor. So it just depends. If you would like one sink on one side, you can pull that side cabinet off and go to 8 feet. But so that's a great question for the bay. Obviously the bay, the big advantage of the bay is you're saving square footage. So for example, if this is a pediatric hygiene bay, here's a chair. I would go 7'6". I would lay down another chair, 7'6", lay down another chair. And then I may have the sinks and cabinetry out in here in a bay support cabinetry. I've had a ortho or pedo plan, we could have shown you that. But it would have a base support cabinetry out here. So, and like I said, even that, it keeps the chairs 6 feet apart. If it's pediatric, I'm going to have some quiet ops. So in pediatric quiet, it may be something like this. It may be closer to 10'4" wide. I have to have a door on here. Sometimes in pedo, though, we don't need the side support cabinetry. Sometimes we have a cabinet all the way across at 12 o'clock. But let's just say a pedo quiet op is more like 9x12. Let's call it 9x12. A pedo bay chair is really, let's call it, gosh, 7, it has a footprint of 7x12, 7'6" is a footprint of a pediatric hygiene bay chair or an ortho bay chair for that example.
We've also done pediatric. We've got one in Odessa, Texas being built right now where he not only has the bay, hygiene bay, what he's terming a hygiene bay, he also has pediatric performing operatories for teenagers, for the older patients, which would be essentially what you're seeing right here, which to your question are what we would call a GP op, but they serve the older, if you will, and heavier, if you will, expanded procedures for older kids.
So one school of thought, it takes more square footage. They're just the same operatories. They're pediatric hygiene. They're the same size. And we've done that too for some doctors who want the separation. They have mom and dad stools down here. They want the separation. Other people don't want to take the space. So in pediatric, even you can still take the chair count times 500 and you're still going to be sort of in the same area because you have larger waiting areas. You may have a kids area, you may have a theater, you may have a staging area, you may have an on deck brush up areas. So there's other stuff supporting the ops that actually inflates the square footage of the facility, because in pedo you have a lot more bodies coming through there. So it's still kind of, it sort of balances itself out to where you have approximately the same size facility, but maybe the ops aren't taking up the same proportionate amount of square footage.
Hopefully that has answered that. Adam, is there anything else?
Oh, there's lots more. We've got about 2 more technical questions, and the rest I believe are COVID related. So let's knock the technical ones out. When looking at a design of a treatment room, what type of a delivery system is most space efficient?
So, okay, that's a great question.
Wish we had that slide, yeah.
I prefer, let me go back to this. So there's multiple types of delivery systems. If you can see this, here's an operatory. So here's a dental chair. There's a unit attached to the dental chair. That's the doctor's module. We call this kind of a radius style delivery unit, a left-right elliptical delivery unit. So the doctor's module, that means the doctor's hand pieces, air water syringe, any kind of accessories. I mean, they're very sophisticated now. You can have cameras, you can have ultrasonic scalers, but doctor's module, that's what the operator, the doctor utilizes. And then there's an assistance module. Well, in this configuration, it's split up. That's the assistance module, HPE, saliva ejector, air water syringe. Back here, assistance work surface. So this is called a split delivery configuration, splitting off the doctor's module from the assistance module. So most people have gone to dental school in the last 15 or 20 years. They all train on this. They're comfortable with this. You know, the operator sits right here, assistant's right there. Doctors are used to grabbing their own hand pieces. You can have a tray or a surface on here. Your Mirror Explorer can be on top of that. You know, it works great from an ergonomic standpoint because you're not torquing around to get your stuff from back here. But pediatric dentists, like I said earlier, they don't want their doctor's module here right by the, you know, kind of exposed to the children. They would prefer it's back here. And they're not doing as extensive procedures, prepping teeth and all of that kind of stuff. So if I took the doctor's module, pulled it off the chair and mounted it back here on the flexible assisting work surface, this would become what we call dual function rear delivery. So a lot of people are big proponents of that. I think it's great for pedo. I've used that, but I didn't enjoy torquing back every time to pull instrumentation and hand pieces from back here.
Well, it was really promoted for four-handed dentistry, which really debatably isn't performed in a lot of dental offices.
Right. So whether it's split delivery like this or dual function rear delivery, these are still ambidextrous operatories. So 20% of the population is left-handed. So in a lefty comes in here, the doctor's module swivels around, comes over here. This unit flips over here. The assistant's module swivels over there. And I now have a setup for a left-handed doctor. So in bigger offices, we highly encourage doctors, hey, you know, don't eliminate lefties because you may have somebody show up, a great associate or partner or hygienist or something, and they can't work there. The room is the same size. You know, it behooves you to create something that has the most flexibility possible. So then there's a third thing called side delivery, where the doctor's module's right here. The doctor's module is mounted on a wall. So if I'm a right-handed operator, I mount this unit, comes over here on a little wall plate, swings out, puts it in the same position. I sit right here. The assistance module can be back here on the flexible work surface on the 12 o'clock cabinet, or it can be mounted to the chair, but the assistant sits over here. Well, it works great if I'm a right-handed operator, but as soon as I flip the room, this is tethered to that wall, and a left-handed operator, doctor can never ever use that room. So we've on a rare occasion done side delivery. It just because of the functional aspects of it, it limits your ability, you know, to bring in left-handed users, and it guts anything over here. That side delivery unit guts this space. So whether you want to bring in a cart or if you want more cabinetry there, that side delivery unit guts that area there and consumes it with a wall plate, a bottled water thing, and then the articulated arm that brings the doctor's module into places. But so dual function rear delivery, split delivery, and then side delivery. I'm a big proponent of split delivery. I think for the typical general practitioner, that gives you the best ergonomics. For pediatric dentists, you're probably going to want dual function rear delivery for hiding it from the kids, and really you're not prepping and doing some of the higher level cases a general practitioner would be. And then oral surgery and stuff's a whole different thing. So, and ortho uses different delivery units.
Cool. I actually want to go back to the first question about the pedo bay and the pedo operatories. We got a couple follow-up questions to that. So the first one is, you know, are there any COVID precautions for a bay setup? And then part two of that is, would the 7'6" centers in a pedo bay or operatory allow for like a wheelchair path?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't need to be on both sides of the chair, but would it allow for a path?
Correct. Yes, and yes.
Yeah. But, so those are good questions. So, and this has come up. So we've done some ortho offices, and they measured them, and they had a 6-foot clearance, you know, between this, because the chairs are centered at 7'6". So technically, if you measured from the side of the chair to the other side of the chair, you've got a 6-foot clearance. And the reason we started doing 7-foot 6 centers was we were building the wheelchair clearance between every chair. So we actually, for many, many years, they did 6-foot centers, 6-foot 6 centers, and you weren't creating 32-inch pathways on either side, and especially in pediatric, where a big part of their work are special needs patients. So we wanted to ensure in that setup that we would have adequate wheelchair access on either side of the chair. So in ortho, where you have a side unit, you know, you have wheelchair access to the left side of the chair, if it's a right side unit, on every single chair. In pediatric, if you have a 12 o'clock cabinet and no side cabinets, on either side of that chair, you have a minimum of a 32-inch clearance, which allows wheelchair access, and it also gets you the separation from the chair next to you, so you have the social distancing. So the good thing about, you know, especially ortho, you're just not creating a lot of mist, you're doing adjustments and stuff. Pedo, I mean, if you're, you know, in pediatric hygiene, you would be creating some aerosols, but you're far enough apart, you know, you're still at the 6-foot distance. You could put a fin up there. You could put a fin, you know, a partial height fin. That it's not going to stop aerosols from going over the top of it, but it creates a visual barrier. You can create a partial height fin that goes up to, let's say, 48 inches. In a pediatric hygiene bay where you can sit as the doctor or the hygienist, and you can actually look down the row and see everybody, but the kids can't see each other next to them.
One of the products I'd recommend if you wanted to be attractive and something other than what you saw at the Home Depot this past Sunday would be to look at 3form. It's the number 3, F-O-R-M. 3form creates divider screens. They can be handled in cables. They can be handled, they've got framework, etc. A designer can certainly help you with designing that so you can have something very attractive. I know there's a job, I think that's on our website, Morocco Orthodontics, where you might see in some of the photos the 3form product. But it has a lot of different colors, patterns, that kind of thing that are very pleasant, take very little room, certainly create the division to whatever degree you want that division, wherever you want that division. We've used that at the front desk area. Notice in this floor plan, we actually built walls, and we're doing that quite frequently. We're dividing the reappointing experience and allowing a patient who's standing here to have a sense of separation from that patient next to them who's also transacting. It does a couple of things. It certainly handles the social distancing we're talking about, but it gives you a sense of privacy. Now, these are not totally private. If we need to have a private conversation and I can't pay my bill or I have a question about treatment, that's where you take me right into this consultation space, this privatized space where I can have that discussion. But speaking to the separation, 3form is a great, I think, resource. There are others out there, but 3form, I would say, would be a highly recommended way of creating divider screens.
And if you were in a, you know, if there was a COVID outbreak or there was just an unusually a large amount of cases in your area, in your pediatric hygiene or ortho, you can go every other chair. You know, if you're concerned and you're at 6-foot or 6-foot 6 centers, or even 7-6, if you're concerned, just take out, you know, go a chair, knock another, you know, take another chair out of use, put it in plastic or whatever, skip a chair. I mean, it'll knock your production down, but if there's a temporary period of a higher outbreak, you could always do that. If that, you know, if as an extra precaution.
Hopefully that helped, Adam.
Yeah, I wish we had a picture of that. We could,
yeah, we have lots of things we could show you. See, if you come to the course, we could show you all this stuff.
Certainly a hot topic. Had a couple questions about kind of reception design with, you know, post-COVID dental design. You know, how should a check-in, check-out look? Should there be a check-in, check-out? Should, you know, dentists even allow, I guess, what should you do more about your reception area?
Well, okay, we both
want to answer this. So
let me go. Okay. Well, I'll go fast and then you can say whatever you want to say. Well, so, you know, there's been talk, okay, let's get rid of the front desk. You know, let's people wait out in their cars and they'll just come in and go right to the ops, and well, I guess we'll check them out at like a, you know, like a drive-in where you come up with a tray and, you know, we complete a transaction at the car. So we're not ready to give up on that. You know, like I said, there in a well-designed office, there's enough space, you know, so whether, if you feel better with a partition up, a plexiglass partition, you know, at the front desk, but you don't want to just totally destroy the ambience and the patient experience of coming to your office. It's still a competitive environment. So if you create sort of a cold, clinical, sterile environment in the name of handling the pandemic, yeah, that's great on one hand. On the other hand, if somebody's handling it the same way or better, and their office is warm and inviting and feels like, they're treating you like a person and you're not behind some kind of a barrier, they're going to have an advantage over you. So I still think, we have spacing in the waiting area. I think at some point, I'm optimistic. I mean, there'll be a vaccine or this will calm down. It'll just, we'll look at it in the past. In a lot of ways, I analogize it to at the airports where we had to go through screening. At some point we never had to do it. We could walk in there. It was no big deal. People could welcome you walking off the plane and give you a big hug. Well, now you have to go through screening. You have to go a little bit earlier. There may be stuff like that. We have to go earlier. There's a little more spacing. There's a little more separation. But it just, to think they're going to have people come in and handle it all, on your cell phone from your car. You have people waiting out in their car in, 20-degree weather with everybody's car running, and you're going to text them and tell them to run in at the last second. I mean, I just don't see that happening. So like I said, you got to have separation. The biggest mistakes we see, operatories too close to the front desk in the name of saving square footage. So if we put 7 ops in 3,500 square feet, we see people put 19 ops in 3,500 square feet. Everybody's on top of each other. You have no chance of controlling kind of social distancing, clinical distancing, whatever you want to call it in the dental office, between people because they're on top of each other. So for example, at this front desk, there's 6 feet of clearance. People can circulate through here. We're not like wedging our way through kind of smallish quarters, and people just have to be sensitive. It's like in the store now, people just you start walking towards them and they kind of zig around you to keep some kind of reasonable distancing. But I still think we greet people. You're asking people to make commitments to high dollar procedures. I mean, you're not going to text them on their phone, hey, yeah, I'm going to do a full mouth reconstruction. It's $39,000. Would you like to do that? You're not going to do that in a text on their cell phone. They're going to need to come in the office. They're going to need to go in a consult room. They're going to need to be received, fill out information, all that kind of stuff. So unless something just gets horribly worse, I don't see it. I think it's distancing and maybe protective barriers that are brought out in peak times at the front desk, and other times they're just put in the storage closet. Pat, what do you?
Well, I think the point is, you've made the point. I think the point is, this is a relationship that you've developed with a patient, and you are responsible for their care and for the notion that, think in terms of function. Any space and any design decision should have a rationale from a design standpoint, should have a rationale for being in existence. And we've gone through the period of time where a lot of dentists were thinking, I'm going to get rid of the front desk. And it really was about dropping off the business side of dentistry, because I don't live there anyway. It's also the reason why I said, and I still say that very strongly, one of the biggest failures in remodels is a result of expanding production on a growing practice, which is the good news, and putting pressure on the front desk and realizing that no longer works. So you've got one person trying to handle 3 or 4 people coming back to a front desk as an example. Notice in this floor plan, we know that we're going to have a number of patients. We've got two individuals ready to receive patients here from this, because we know the level of service that's going to be provided in this facility and the circulation and flow and addressing patients in post-treatment that's going to occur in this practice. So when you're growing in terms of operatories, you've got to grow that business side. And these conversations about eliminating the front desk really, quite frankly, don't make sense to us.
Sorry,
And
I thought I was going to go quickly to that, but it wasn't quick.
So just said the point is that there's separation in an office that has typical design principles like we've promoted for many years. So I don't know if that answers it, but that's
well. You're asking our thoughts on it. Those are our thoughts. So I know there's a lot of differing opinions coming up here, a lot of conclusions that people are jumping to because of some of the reactions, obviously, that are necessary to take at this time.
And I would just say, a lot of dental is there's a lot of discretionary money in dental,
right.
unlike medical, where some stuff, we would say, well, you need to go to dentists, need to have your teeth cleaned, you need to have regular checkups. Well, a lot of people don't do it. They're much more inclined to do that medically, but there's a lot of discretionary income in there. I think it gives you an advantage to have a warm, welcoming environment where people have a chance to interact with you and your staff and understand what you're trying to do to help them. And it's not the DMV, it's not a cattle call. It's it's the same thing, principles that many of you use over the years to build your practices up, and I don't see that going away.
Adam, help us. I see the time. What can we help with?
Yes, we are out of time, but I do want to ask one more question because I think it's important.
Okay.
But before we get to that, for those of you that did ask questions and we did not get to your question, we will get answers to you. So please be patient with us, and we'll work with the Carters to try and get your answers as soon as possible. But the last question I want to ask deals with the sterilization area. And it's kind of a 2 or 3 part question. The first one is, what's the ideal dimensions for a sterilization area lengthwise?
Perfect. Okay.
The second part is, how many people should you have in the sterilization area given COVID precautions? And then the third part is, if you were to invest in a sterilization center that goes from dirty to clean workflow, should you expect an increase in productivity or time as well as safety?
I'm sure.
Well, I'm going to just start with that last question first. Yes. I mean, if you have created an efficient flow where you can effectively manage the instrumentation as far as clean to dirt and everything, that means we're not in there, as Hugh Freedy will sometimes say, washing dishes, because we have the right equipment. We've got it positioned well. We're using, in this case, and their argument for, are cassettes, which are very efficient, can be done efficiently as long as the sterilization is organized in that way. And so if they're not in there washing dishes, as it were, then they should be out there helping and, if you will, adding to production, because they are not stuck in the sterilization area handling that. As far as a head count, that's an interesting question. It really,
I would say 1.
Yeah.
Well, so Adam, it brings up, okay, and you're in a smallish office, you have the auxiliaries or assistants running in and out of the sterilization area, managing the sterilization process, running back to the ops, being assistants, doing all the stuff that they do. Well, that, it works okay to a degree in a smaller office, but that's actually the most inefficient way to do it. When you get in a larger office, let's say you hit 7, 8, 9 ops, makes all the sense in the world to have a dedicated sterile technician that all they do is, receive the incoming contaminated stuff and then sterilize it and then distribute the clean sterilized instrumentation, whether it's in cassettes or bagged or whatever. But that limits it to 1 person, but you have to have you have to have a reasonably sized office to do that. So I'm answering that. Well, so I just say ideally you have 1 person, they're dedicated to that. If you have 3 or 4 ops, you're not going to dedicate 1 person to be in the sterile all day long because there's not enough of an instrument flow. Like I said, in a larger office, it makes all the sense because you almost need 1 person just to keep up with it versus having auxiliaries racing in and out of there trying to keep up with it, or doing it at lunch or doing it at the end of the day. So the less people that are in there, the less chance of exposure. So,
and the sizing of the sterilization, I think, is a great question.
Yeah,
so the minimal size of an sterilization area that we would see is your typical 10 or 12 foot run, which is kind of what you're seeing in here. But I wanted to show in the floor plan the orientation of the sterilization
okay, but let me
area.
give the lineal feet.
So
this is the hard. So I've struggled for years trying to come up with a formula. There is no formula that exactly spells this out. But in easiest terms, so for 4 to 5 operatories, we would recommend 12 lineal feet of sterilization. So starting here at the dirty breakdown all the way to the clean buildup, 4 to 5 operatories, we would recommend 12 lineal feet of cabinetry, whether it's a straight run, whether it's an L, whether it's in 2 galleys, it doesn't matter. But
always clean to dirty or dirty to clean.
So then for every 2 operatories, you go up 2 lineal feet of cabinetry countertop. So 6 to 7 ops, 14 lineal feet of counter cabinetry from dirty breakdown to clean buildup. 8 to 9, 16 feet. 10 to 11, 18 feet. So just start at 5. So 4 to 5 is 12 lineal feet. For every 2 feet, or for every 2 more ops you add to your office, you add 2 more lineal feet. So
that seems to work out really well. As far as the instrumentation amount that would be coming in and needing to be sterilized for those size offices. Another thing that we're seeing that we're putting into sterilization areas too are CPU workstations. I mean, there are other considerations. We're just speaking to the sterilization
processing run, right? So that shouldn't be contaminated with other stuff. So you don't want a workstation right in the middle of what we're showing here. That could be on the other wall, or
as in this floor plan.
Right. So go.
As in this floor plan,
So we have a countertop here, although this is dedicated to clean storage and everything. We sometimes will see this showing up as a workstation, and you have an L shape. Part of the reason for the L shape is, again, 2 operatories away. It opens up an opening here and opening here, so I have very efficient flow in and out of that sterilization area where I'm not traveling great distances. But this can also translate just to a 10 to 12 if I just have 4 operatories this way. It can be a galley where I have clean on one side, dirty on the other, where I have 4 or 5 operatories along this run. So the shape of the sterilization area should be responding to wherever those operatories and or the amount of operatories you have. Sometimes we'll even have satellite sterilization areas. Once you get into 10, 14, 18, 25 operatories where we've done that, you may have a central sterilization area and 2 satellite sterilization areas. And we talk in very detailed terms with those clients about what happens in those satellites, but that you always have access by assistance from operatories for quick return to the operatories, but efficient servicing, if you will, to the central sterilization area.
Did that answer it, Adam?
We could talk for a long time about this. We've got to stop.
So yeah, 1 person ideally, 4 to 5 ops, 12 lineal feet, add 2 lineal feet for every 2 ops past that. And what was the other one?
No,
I think that's it. Okay.
That's it. It's size based on the number of ops.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much for your presentation today. You know, office design office design is a super hot topic right now, so we truly appreciate your input, feedback, and guidance. As I mentioned, if we did not get to your question, or if you have additional questions, please email us at webinars@henryschein.com, and we will work with Dr. Jeff and Pat to get answers back to you as soon as we can.
Absolutely.
This webinar was recorded, and you will receive a link of today's webinar in the coming week via email. On behalf of Henry Schein Admin Mark, I would like to once again thank the Carters for their time today and thank all of you for attending. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Adam.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.